Hey guys, it is Tristan with the Nerdouts Newsstand, and there has been a lot of news today when it comes to Spider-Man and Doctor Strange and all of the copyright issues going around with it. We are going to talk about this a little bit more tomorrow on Thinking Critical's morning stream, Comics Aficionados, so make sure you guys check that out. I will put the link in the pinned comment. But as far as all of this goes, it seems like right now we're seeing a difference between work for hire and, of course, IP being owned by the creator. Now, to be specific, we are seeing certain copyrights that have been filed. One for Spider-Man, right? And then this one is for Doctor Strange. We're seeing Doctor Strange of Black Magic, and then we are seeing Spider-Man in Amazing Fantasy Volume 1, number 15. These are the first versions of this character, and they are being filed on behalf of Patrick S. Ditko, which is the owner of the estate for Steve Ditko. Now, when Steve Ditko was alive, he did a lot of work, but really he just wanted to be left alone. Steve Ditko was an amazing creator. He did an amazing amount of good for the comic book industry. But when it came to royalties and everything, he really was an introvert. He was, I believe, an objectivist. And he really kept to himself. And that's okay. But when it comes to his estate, now that everything is up, we're seeing a change of pace. So will this change everything? Very unlikely. I seen a video last night, I believe it was by Rich Johnson on his YouTube channel, talking about this, that it was going to break today. And I didn't think it would get near as much widespread attention because we've seen stuff like this happen before when it comes to people like specifically the Schuster family, right? But that was a little different because they had already filed the IP under a different company and they had actually owned it. But what we're talking about now is work for hire. So what I want to explain this in a very weird way. From my understanding, I am no way a lawyer. Okay, so let's explain this. So let's say that I get a avatar made for my channel, and I pay for that avatar to be made. Somebody creates it from the ground up, off of my likeness, and they make that for me. I pay that commission. And then in 6 months, a year down the road, for some odd reason, my channel blows up and I have millions of subscribers. And that person comes back and says, look, you've used this avatar this entire time. I want royalties for the entirety of it. You can't do that when it's work for hire instead of the difference between going and actually making that IP, then selling that IP. That is where I have the issue. Now, again, I'm not going to claim like I know the legal aspects of it, which there is plenty, but I'm not sure that this is going to go anywhere, even if it did, even say this was lost. It does seem like we would see still these comic characters be able to be created and used, but what wouldn't be able to use was anything in these original comics. So stuff like the name Peter Parker, stuff like the name Stephen Strange, Flash Thompson. These type things would not be able to use. Aunt May, Uncle Ben. Those would all be under the copyright that would then be owned by the estate of Steve Ditko, and he could do with it what he wants. Mainly, it would be something like he could sell it, or he could then, get people to make different comics in those likeness, or he could even, team up with Batman. It's not going to happen. What's likely going to happen in a situation like this is that they're going to settle out of court. They're not going to want this to be a big deal. It'll be a big deal right now. And then eventually it will settle out of court. And we're actually seeing Marvel suing to keep the rights to Avenger characters from copyright termination. There is so much gray area when it comes to copyright. It is very hard to know what can happen and what will happen. Likely in a company worth billions, talking about Disney and Marvel here, they're just going to settle because they would lose billions. Without those IPs, they would lose billions. But we are seeing, basically, here's the documentation. And I went through it the best I could. But because of stuff like the Marvel method and the difference between the litigation figures to focus on the Marvel method, a loose collaborative working atmosphere where initial ideas were briefly discussed with artists responsible for taking care of the details. The Marvel method has been subject to prior litigation, such as with Ghostwriter. Now, a lot of these things have been lost, right? And actually, I believe the name of the lawyer is up here. Lawrence Lieber, he is the one that lost against and represented for the Schuster family, though they do get money each month for those IPs, but he's never actually won when it comes to this. So basically we're seeing Marvel kind of being proactive about this, which is probably smart, but copyright law is so gray that we're seeing stuff like work for hire being up to question. And I don't necessarily think that's okay. And I'm not on the side of big, corporations at all. I do think that every person that made their IP, that made their work, that did their work, should get their royalties, should get their due. But if you are being hired, like let's talk about something more recent, James Tynion has been a Batman writer for quite a while now. He has created quite a few new IPs. Miracle Molly, Punchline, Ghostmaker, all characters that I actually really like. Clown Hunter, right? All of these brand new characters, the Insanity Collective, we are seeing in DC Comics. But he will get his royalties if for some reason they were to blow up. But because he created those under the title of being an exclusive writer at DC, he doesn't own those characters. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot go to creator owned right now, right? We're seeing the likes of, Jeff Johns doing Geiger or Scott Snyder doing Noctera, Ram V doing Layla Starr, Blue and Green. These creator owned projects, if you're a comic book artist or writer, are where you're going to get money if they are optioned for something like a deal for streaming services. Because right now, when you create them, you're owned by them. And we've seen a lot of this in the past when it comes to people like Alan Moore, very vocal about copyright laws and him getting screwed basically out of ones that he created that were eventually supposed to revert back to him in the name of Watchmen, right? And eventually they didn't because the clause in there was once they're not being printed. Well, Watchmen blew up. It was constantly printed. It will always be one of the most, well-renowned graphic novels made. He's never going to get those rights, and he knows that at this point, right? But we're seeing that gray area being dived into by big corporations. And that's always going to happen. So what happens now? Well, they settle out of court, likely, very likely. And we don't hear about this again, except for maybe a write-up in the Hollywood Reporter saying, well, this was settled out of court. And now, the Ditko family is getting $25,000 a month or $50 million settlement. It just depends on how they go about that. But it's likely nothing's going to change. It's not going to change the fact that we've got movies and video games coming out for Spider-Man. We're not going to see any difference. It's not the reason why characters are created like Miles Morales or Gwenpool. It's not the reason why Doctor Strange is dying in the comics right now. It is none of that. This will all be settled behind closed doors. And that's kind of usually how it goes, right? So anyways, I wish the best for the Ditko son. I hope he gets what he deserves, but I also hope at some point we realize that when you're creating work for hire, you unfortunately, oh Jesus, what can we pull from the Joker here? You get what you deserve. You got to be more careful with those IPs and go creator owned. So Anyways, let me know, of course, what you guys think about this. Let me know if you think I'm wrong. Maybe you think there's going to be some other outcome. Let me know. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.